I was not an activist, or I honestly, I was the last person that anyone ever thought would be involved in any of this. My family's not politically involved. We tried to stay away from that all our lives because it's so dark. If you get into it, you go down this path that you just don't know if you can get out of. So, being from Iran, I think it was an escape for us when we moved to Australia. We were, okay, it's done, it's over. And I thought, I actually got back from Iran 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago, and I thought to myself that I'm never going to go back. I don't, the people, the place, everything. I don't love it anymore. It's not my home. So I actually thought that, or at least I wanted to think that. And I came here thinking, okay, I can finally make a life here, because I used to hate Australia because my dad dragged me here for this better life that he was promising. But from what I could think of, from what I could remember, my life was great in Iran, right? Because I wasn't thinking about all these stuff happening in the background. I didn't think that I could be Mahsa Amini. I didn't think that I would have been. And now knowing myself, I 100% would have been, because I would have spoken up, and I probably would have been at best in jail, or easier to say, at best killed, because I've shared this on my social media. When you get arrested, you wish for death, because the stuff that happens to you if you live in those prisons. I don't think people want to hear about this. This is one thing that I don't think we can get into because of how terrifying the tortures are. But no, I came here and I thought, I'm done with Iran. That's it. I am somehow an Australian to a point, and I don't care. And then on my birthday, I woke up and I saw these posts. It wasn't as significant at the time, and it was one of my friends in Iran who has hijab, right? So she wears the hijab and she's got a religious family. And I saw her posting these things about the government and what they're doing, and they're killing people. And I was thinking, great, on my birthday, wonderful. And I had a party. And I didn't post anything about it because I was like, well, this happens every decade. We've had uprisings in Iran every single decade, and each time they've silenced people and they've killed people and they've scared people to go back into their little boxes and stay there. But she kept posting so much about how she hates people that are quiet, and how we can go on with our day and post stories about our parties. And she kept posting this, and I was quite frustrated in the beginning. I was like, it's my birthday. Why should I care? And then it hit me. Like, by the night it hit me, I was like, oh my God, she has a job and she's speaking up. She was posting 100+ stories on that day about everything that's happening. And that's when other people started posting, and it grabbed my attention. And at that point, then I saw, okay, someone I know is in prison, someone I know is arrested. Oh my God, I got a call from my cousin. She's beaten up. Then it became this massive thing. My high school friend died in one of the protests, and I saw her photo, and I was like, these are people that I have memories with. My best days, the best days in my life I spent with these people, and they're getting raped and killed and murdered on the streets for fighting a fight that I was too scared to fight. Um, so yeah, that's when it grabbed my attention, and that's when I started posting. And then that was also when I realized that a lot of people aren't. So other friends joined, and it just became this massive movement. And I think I touched on it a little bit before on a call with you, that the protests, they weren't a thing in other countries globally. People didn't think it would matter. I don't know if a lot of the people that are listening to this know about flights, the Ukrainian flight PS 752, that the Iranian regime shut down. Do
Yeah,
you
very
know?
brief. I've heard it mentioned, but I don't know many of the details. So if you can,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
continue with that
So it
one.
was it was so that was one of the most tragic moments of our life. So again, that should say a lot, knowing what we go through as like a normal woman or a normal person in Iran. So that was really traumatic, because it was a passenger flight. I think, yeah, PS 752 with 176 passengers on board. The Iranian regime shut it down just because they wanted to create a distraction. Again, people can read about it later of how they shed a light on it, and how it actually, the truth came out, because the Islamic regime was saying that it's not them and they didn't do this, and it's other governments and other countries that actually shot it down. And Canada, and the Prime Minister of Canada actually pushed so much for this, for the truth to come out, and asked for the black box. And they actually listened to the call, and it was an ongoing investigation for a long time. And I remember I was in a relationship at the time with an Australian, and I kept crying my eyeballs off because I couldn't believe. And the students that were on that flight, they were all Canadian immigrants. So I knew a lot of them, and my friends knew a lot of them. It was exactly my age group, and it was people from Sharif University and people smart enough to get scholarships overseas, and they were visiting family, just going back to Canada. So it was just heartbreaking, and I remember not understanding why my partner couldn't even understand the pain, let alone show me support, and he couldn't, and I let it go, but it was quite painful at the time. And so two victims were a mother and a child, and the victim's husband, for the last 2 years, he has posted about how he wants justice for his family every single day. He's a dentist and he's a writer. I'll share his name's Hamed Esmaili, and I'll share his profile with you. He's so inspirational. People are actually saying that if there is ever a leader after the Iranian regime is overthrown, we want someone like him. He has not stayed quiet every single day for the past 2 years. He's written about his wife and his child that was killed and all the victims. And he started these protests. So firstly, he was alone. He grabbed whatever he had on him in Canada, walking the streets. So he was protesting, and he was sharing these on his pages and crying and literally doing everything humanly possible to raise awareness. And then that's how the global protest started. So he kept telling people to speak up, and one by one people spoke up, and it reached Australia, Germany, all over the world, even in China. So it's every single, like Estonia, it's this tiny place in Europe that even they had a protest. So it's crazy. It's crazy, and it's also, it warms up my heart to know that a movement like this can happen, and that can start by one person, and that's how much it means to us if one more person speaks up, because it can only do so much more. But that's how it all started. So basically, what I was getting at by explaining the PS752 tragic events was saying that one victim that spoke up inspired me to also speak up, and I inspired other non-Persians to speak up, and it led to me speaking on the protests and me becoming a somewhat activist. And before I knew it, people were saying, put your account on private. And so obviously the Iranian regime don't see what you're doing, because I could very well be killed if I go back to Iran. And that's a fact. And it was so insignificant at the time, and my family could be in danger if they ever go back. And I put so many people with the same name, with the same last name as mine, in danger. And I thought for one second, I thought about being quiet. And then so many videos came out of these women, these young kids dying every day and screaming in the streets and burning their hijabs, trying to fight this fight for us, for someone that wasn't brave enough to stay in that country. And I say that freely, and I think I stand by it. And then I couldn't. It was a small price to pay. So that's how I figured, okay, well, I can't stay quiet, even though I have so much to lose, even though technically I've left Iran. I shouldn't care. I'm living a great life here. Why would I make myself go through hell every day and put my account in public? And yes, I've gotten calls from the Iranian regime threatening me as well, just so you would know how drastic it is.
Can I ask you,
Yeah.
how does that happen? Like, what's the...
They give you a call from God knows where, you don't know, and they threaten your family and your loved ones, and they say that if you speak up and if you keep sharing this, because obviously they can't reach you, so every journalist, every activist, every human being that's spoken up in Iran, they're in that jail that they set on fire, so they can physically grab them and remove them, but they can't do it to me here. So the only way is threatening my loved ones back in Iran, which is still quite traumatic. But to answer your earlier question, why I can't stop speaking up, I don't know if it's called bravery. I don't know if it's being stubborn. It's, again, that part of humanity that I'd like to keep with me, because it's not just me anymore. I want someone, if someone's going to be a part of my life, I want them to be proud of who I am. I don't want to be a hypocrite. And I find a lot of hypocrites in Australia, and that pains me to watch. But yeah, that's how I started this whole thing.